The truth of it is, I am aware, because I do see some comments, I am aware that much of the content of these weekly monologues, pieces to camera, whatever, much of it is dark in tone and sometimes dark in delivery. I know that. And I think about it, I ruminate on that, and I think perhaps the truth is it's in my nature. I think fundamentally I do have, or I tend towards a pessimistic line of thought at times, maybe most of the time, and I fear the worst. I am admittedly most of the time a glass half empty sort of a fellow, but I do have the great good fortune, and I feel the luck of it more and more with every passing day. But I do have the great good fortune to be married to a woman who is much more optimistic than I am. and I think this is, well, it's surely part of how well we are together, how well we fit together, because we each offer the other an alternative point of view on everything. And that's crucial. I think if we were both hyper optimistic or both hyper pessimistic, I really don't think it would work out as well. And I would say better yet is that Trudy's positivity, it edges, I would say, let's say by at least 51 to 49%, but I like to think the margin is greater than that. But she edges my gloominess into second place, so that the net effect is that together we are positive. She does that to me. She does that to the dyad. And so, at this time of year, in the northern latitudes, let's say in the northern hemisphere, it's a time to resist the dark and to look for light, or where light is absent, to seek to kindle light. It's as if in the northern latitudes at this time of year, the universe is actually inviting you to contemplate the obvious and do something about it. And that is why, and I think it is to do with the kind of darkness or the pessimism that's in me. I think this is why the run up to Christmas is my undoubted favourite time of the year. Always has been. And more than by any other time of the year, and more than by any other season, I'm encouraged by, how to describe it, I suppose, the defiant lights that appear now. And I've said this before, I'm sure I said last year, and it seemed to be a symptom or a consequence of what was going on, that people went for Christmas earlier around us. We saw Christmas trees and Christmas lights and twinkly lights on the outside of houses. They came on earlier. They were there earlier, as though people were, for all sorts of different reasons, I'm sure, but wanting the optimism of Christmas in their lives and in their days earlier than they had previously. And that's continuing. We were laughing about it. I mean, we've been seeing Christmas trees appear in windows since the end of November, which is a bit early for us. But I don't decry it. Actually, I'm glad so many people have done it. But Trudy and I light fires in winter more and more now. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, Trudy gave me a fire pit for Christmas. You know those iron bowl things that you have in the garden, you put charcoal in and whatnot. Well, Trudy gave me one, and it's a fabulous thing. It's made of sheet steel, 0.5 centimetre thick. It's just, it takes both of us to move it. It's got these big hoop handles, and it takes both of us to get it into position. And it wasn't our first fire pit either. We'd inherited a fire pit from friends who emigrated. And it was one of the things they just didn't take with them. So they gave it to us because they knew that I had coveted it. And we used it till it wore through. We actually had so many fires in it that the holes appeared in it. It was thinner than the one I've got now, and the heat just got to it. But we've got this daddy of all fire pits now, and we light the fire pit and we have barbecues throughout the winter. And a few years ago, just before my dad died, we had a Christmas barbecue dinner. We put up a marquee in the garden, a little marquee, and we lit braziers and the fire pit. And instead of turkey and the rest of it, we cooked chicken drumsticks and steaks and burgers and all of that. And the kids loved it, particularly. And we had extended family kids there as well, and it was a huge success. But so we think that it's now really when the dark comes earliest and the nights are longest that it makes the most sense to light more fires. I mean, most people barbecue always and only in the summertime, which is nice, but we think it's in the dark when it's cold that you really should make the most use of fire. And Trudy and I, sometimes the kids do it too, but Trudy and I, we sit outside long into the dark, long into the night, and the fire pit is better to watch than anything else. You know, it's far better than anything on Netflix. So this week, here's the thing, this week and in the weeks ahead, I want to, as far as I can, as much as I'm able, to defy the darkness, the literal darkness and the darkness as much as possible, and celebrate, you know, the power of fire and light instead. And I'm going to be unabashed about that. I'm making no secret of the fact that that is what I'm deliberately going to do. And everything about light in the darkness and warmth in the face of the cold, good against bad, positive against negative, is anathema to the forces that are ranged against us. And I make no secret about that either. There's an enemy out there, and it's after us. And to be human, I would say, the best of humanity is a defiance of darkness. The best of humanity is the defiance of death itself. And that's why it's at this time of year, in the Northern Hemisphere, I'm aware it's different at the other end of the world, but in the Northern Hemisphere, it's now that the contrast between who we are, who we want to be, and the life that we want more than anything else for our children, it's when the contrast with that and what the bad guys want to offer us instead or force upon us is so acute. It's especially obvious now at this time of year. And this is why Christmas time can be, and I stress can be, the most powerful time of the year. What's ranged against us? What, you know, out there coming up with all the trouble in the world, waging war, denying freedoms, seeking to take more and more control of every aspect of life, is literally anti-human. And in being anti-human, it's anti-life itself. That's the enemy. And Christmas, however cynical you are, I would say the best kind of Christmas, the most whole-souled, whole-spirited kind of Christmas, promises so much that celebrates the best of what it is simply to be human and alive. And it's a season that's all about, at the simplest, it's about getting together with loved ones. It's about defying the dark by being together. It's about defying the cold by being together. It's about sharing food. You know, the festival of Christmas, it's a time of feast, if you can. And you might say it's about sharing the best food available, but it's also simple. It's roasted meats. When you get right down to it. And it's about light. And it's about the promise of the most optimistic and hopeful gift there is or ever can be, which is, well, it's about the birth of a child. That's what Christmas is. And it's always worth remembering that. Well, and obviously for Christians, it's about the birth of Jesus. And it's worth stating that. And I don't make any qualification for it. That's what Christmas is for Christians. And it's the story of the birth of a special child. But the story of the birth of a special child predates Christianity. I mean, there's various... the Roman poet Virgil, who died decades before the birth of Jesus Christ, he wrote about the birth of a boy who will bring a golden age to the world, and one in which wickedness will be taken away and the earth will be freed from fear. And also within the poem, he has it that the child will receive the life of gods and reign over a world of peace, or a world at peace. And Scholars look back and say that what he was doing there in that work in the decades before the birth of Christ is already there in the book of Isaiah of the Old Testament. And the book of Isaiah was written 700 years, let's say, before the birth of Christ by the Jewish prophet of the same name, Isaiah. But Christians believe Virgil was predicting Jesus Christ. There's a school of thought that says that even before there was Christianity, Virgil was a kind of pre-Christian who could see, who was predicting the birth of Jesus Christ. And Isaiah predicted the birth of Jesus Christ as well, just as one example. If you read in the King James version of the Bible, you get, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." It's the same. It's this idea in both Virgil and Isaiah that someone's coming who will create peace, will deliver a golden age. So that said, I mean, and without wanting to return to my natural gloominess, it would be naive and thoughtless of me not to point out the glaringly obvious, which is that the baddies are working round the clock to make it impossible for more and more of us, for more and more people, to enjoy something as simple as Christmas. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that, the hardship. And so apart from the fact that Christianity itself is plainly anathema to the globalist cult, the anti-human death cult manifest amongst other places in the World Health Organization, or the irony, health, and the World Economic Forum, and the rest of them, that for them, everything around Christmas is anathema too, and therefore in their sights, something else that has to be dismantled and swept away. That same cult is anti-children in ways I don't even like contemplating. Anti-birth, anti-fertility, anti-procreation. So that the idea of celebrating the birth of a child, any child, let alone a child dedicated to peace, is more anathema. The same baddies are at war on food, of course, so that, it's easy to imagine globalist fantasies of meat-free Christmas dinners, of insects and tofu and, God knows, lab-grown horrors in place of everything traditional. They're at war on coal fires. They're at war on log-burning stoves. They'll be at war with fire pits, I have no doubt. Gathering round the air source heat pump just doesn't conjure positive thoughts. There won't be any carols written about that. And most obvious of all is the deliberate immiseration of more and more people. The cost of living crisis is manufactured and deliberate. There's no need for it. It's being foisted upon us. The increasing impossibility of keeping homes warm is manufactured and deliberate. Take it back to the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline, if you will, and we watch what's happening in Germany and across Europe for want of access to reliable energy and therefore reliable warmth and light. And I'm all too aware of how many people this year and every year will and do struggle or will simply be unable to heat their homes or to put food on the table, far less contemplate the buying of gifts. And of course, I would be being willfully blind if I didn't acknowledge the horror and the misery for millions living right now, this moment, in the so-called Holy Land from which Christianity derives in the first place. It's a place of death and suffering and children without parents and parents without children. And I know all of this and more besides. And this is why, this year of all years, it matters to defy the darkness, the very thought of darkness, in every way you can. There's a line etched in defiance into the wall of a basement by someone hiding from Nazis during World War II, which reads, "I believe in the sun even when I cannot see it. I believe in love even when I do not feel it. I believe in God even when he is silent." And In all circumstances, it's possible. It's vital to remember the light and to remember that warmth is real. Light is real, warmth is real, whether you can see or feel either. And we are set upon by an anti-human movement. It's a fact. It's undeniable. But we can resist, and we do resist, in simple and fundamental ways by keeping lights lit and fires warm wherever possible, and sharing both with others. I rely on Trudy's positivity, my wife's positivity. I rely on her optimism, and both are real. Her optimism's real. It's not fake. Her positivity is real. It comes from somewhere deep. And day follows night. Light follows dark. Winter follows summer and autumn, but winter knows that spring is coming. Winter knows that spring always comes. And so in amongst all of this time of year, light fires, keep lights burning, because the light and the sun will come back.